The dark cosmos. Stay cosmic. Chapter 1. The sky above RA-215 was always overcast, and the atmosphere foggy. It mattered little what the weather forecast said for the surrounding areas. The weather here had a mind of its own, and no meteorologist could predict it. Not since the accident. But it did rain in RA-215. More often light showers and single-cell thunderstorms, and rarely multi-cell thunderstorms. Unfortunately, for the two figures running through the debris that had once been a city, it happened to be one of those rare days in RA-215. The figures, a man and a woman, both dressed in hazmat suits with oxygen tanks on their backs, were making their way toward what remained of a dilapidated building to seek shelter before the worst of the storm arrived as the rain pelted at their protective gear. "Come on, Zara, move it!" the man yelled, his voice lost to the harsh winds but carried across their short-range communication devices fitted to their suits.
"I am moving it,"
Zara snapped as she struggled to keep up with him. Unlike him, she was also laden with a high-powered assault rifle that was now weighing her down. A brilliant flash of lightning streaked across the dark sky, followed swiftly by a thunderclap that sent them crouching instinctively. "Well, move faster!" he yelled when he had recovered his wit.
"I am a retired single mother, Theodore. This is as fast as I can move."
He grabbed her hand and pulled her along as he redoubled his speed, and soon they burst into the building. Like every other building within RA-215, there was a little left of the building compared to its former self, but it was walls around them, and even a significant portion of the floor above, which was enough to serve as a roof over their head. And even though the windows were wide open, they were safe. No sooner had they arrived when the downpour began in earnest. "Looks like we made it in time," Theo said as he shook off the water droplets. "We should be safe here until the rain passes. And then..." Zara let the rest of the sentence remain unspoken. "And then we continue with our mission and hope for the best." He picked a wall and sat down against it. Zara was about to join him when a flicker of black caught their eye from the next room. Was someone else here? No, that was impossible. Theo must have noticed her sudden head movement as she turned. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing. I'll take a quick look around," she said. "It's an empty building in the middle of a dead zone, Zara. I know you dabbled in archaeology, but what are you expecting to find? Roaches?" He chuckled as if it was some amusing joke, but Zara did not bother to respond. She went on into the next room, leaving Theo behind. The doorway opened into a narrow hallway with two elevator shafts to her left, indicating, as she had earlier suspected, that they were in what used to be an office building. But the hallway was empty, with no sign of the shadow she had seen. Zara mentally facepalmed inside. Of course there was nothing. A trick of light, perhaps. She turned away, but before she could leave, she felt a chill race down her spine. She turned back towards the long hallway, but instead found herself face to face with a mass of black smoke. With a startled shriek, she backed away. That was when she realized that the black smoke was not entirely formless. It had no body, but it did have a gray face that its wispy body was tethered to. The face was like a hardened humanoid mask, but it was partially see-through, and underneath the mask was a skull with glowing blue eyes. It recoiled and let loose an unearthly wail. The research base stood right on the outer edges of RA-215, several miles away from the fence, an imposing mall that towered to the heavens, meant to keep people out of the city, and to keep things in. In the command center, men and women in lab coats sat in front of screens, tapping away on their keyboards, and in the middle of the room, General Grant, the head of operations, was going over a set of blueprints with a smaller group. A sergeant approached, but seeing that the general was busy, waited a few feet away until the general looked up. "What is it?" the general said.
"The chopper just landed, sir. They're here."
"Good. Get them to the briefing room." The sergeant saluted and hurried off. As he did, General Grant picked up a tablet and pulled up the files on the new arrivals. A retired explorer / part-time archaeologist with an astounding record. A greenhorn nuclear physicist, a war veteran, and a medic. He had handpicked them himself, not only by qualifications, but also by how easily they could be convinced to carry out the very dangerous mission ahead of them. They were to go into RA-215 to investigate the anomalies and recover information. There was also the matter of the power core beneath the ruins at the very heart of it. When the general arrived at the briefing room, they were already waiting for him around the conference table. "Morning, ladies and gentlemen," he said. "I am General Grant, and I believe that is all the information you need. The rest was contained in the files that were given to you 2 weeks ago. A transport vehicle is being arranged as we speak, and when I leave, someone will escort you all to the changing room, and then you will set out to RA-215. Any getting to know each other can happen on the way, and it better happen fast, because as soon as you cross the fence, you're out of range of our communication devices. Any questions? I expect none. Those files were thorough." A brief pause. "That will be all." And like he had somewhere more important to be, he marched right out of the room. It was a half-minute after he departed before anyone spoke. "Well, he's pleasant," the young man with the bright blonde hair and boyish look said, looking around at the other three. "Hello, everyone. I'm Theodore, but I prefer Theo." From the end of the table, Zara studied him quietly. Theo Hill, the nuclear physicist. She knew of him from the files, but they only spoke of his academic records and not his personality. She hoped there was more to him than the pretty face. The other two, Ryan Loyne, ex-military, and Maya Harper, military doctor, seemed to know each other already. And on a personal level too, she suspected. They barely exchanged pleasantries when the door opened and a man in uniform came to escort them away. They were taken to the changing room together, but between getting fitted into the hazmat suits and the brief orientation, they did not get a chance to speak to each other until they were packed into the airtight truck and sent off. Ryan was the designated driver, as he had the most experience navigating unfamiliar terrains by vehicle. Zara, who had studied the city map as well as had experience with ruined cities, rode shotgun, and Maya, who was in fact Ryan's girlfriend, went behind with Theo. As they were the only ones with training and experience, only Ryan and Zara were cleared to carry firearms, assault rifles issued to them by the military. At first, the drive took place in absolute silence, which was to be blamed on the tension as they drove through the fence, rapidly approaching RA-215. It had been years since the nuclear plant exploded, laying waste to everything in wake, and they were about to be the first people to set foot in the city. The atmosphere grew darker, and the gray clouds thickened overhead as the fence faded out of sight behind them. The silence resumed, but this time it only lasted a while, before Theo broke the ice. "So, what are we betting on? Zombies or straight-up skeleton people?" There was a pause, and Zara could tell they were all thinking the same thing. Satellite imagery had recently picked up movement within the dead zone, and no one knew what it was. Still, the joke worked to alleviate the tension as Maya let out a genuine chuckle, echoed by Ryan.
What about ghosts, though?
Maya said. "Ghosts aren't real," Theo shrugged. "Well, neither are zombies." Ryan glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Yes, but zombies are a possibility, compared to ghosts." They proceeded into a debate on the matter, but Zara zoned out. She knew not to let her guard down, and it was because she didn't that she sensed trouble coming, and it came from beneath them. "Guys, do you feel that?" she said, cutting through the conversation. "Feel what?" Ryan said. Before she could answer, they were interrupted by a sharp crackling sound. "What the hell?" "Earthquake," Zara muttered. "Earthquake!" Before their eyes, the road ahead split in two, and the crevice made a beeline for the car. Ryan swerved to avoid it, but hit a pile of rubble. The next moment, they were airborne and spinning. The vehicle hit the ground and rolled several times before coming to a stop upside down. "Everybody out! Get out!" Ryan yelled. "The vehicle had been compromised! Grab your oxygen and get out!" There was a frenzy of movement, but by the end of it, only Theo and Maya found themselves standing outside, a few feet away from the overturned vehicle. They looked at each other with wide eyes, then looked back to the truck. "Ryan!" Maya screamed. She rushed towards the vehicle, but before she could get to it, the earthquake cut right through a building, bringing it down in their direction. Zara! The sound of her name snapped her attention away from the specter just as Theo ran into the hallway. I heard screaming. What happened? It's the... Zara turned back and trailed off. Because once again, the hallway was empty, with no sign of the specter. Never mind. Must have been a figment of my imagination. Chapter 2. It was another hour before the storm let up, and Zara and Theo finally emerged from the building. Zara was still shaken up, but she did a good job hiding it. The specter she had witnessed had been included in the files. A low-orbiting satellite had managed to capture a blurry image of it, and the scientists at the base had taken to calling them mirror echoes. She had seen a lot of things in her time, some of which was prohibited by the government from ever talking about, but that one was new. A few hours, and she already felt out of her depth. The files had mentioned seismic activity within the city, but the earthquake had literally come out of nowhere. It was only after the building collapsed that she managed to get out of the truck and find her way through the dust and rubble to Theo, but Maya and Ryan were nowhere to be found. Breaking out of her train of thoughts, Zara realized that Theo was talking to her. What? She said. I think we should just call it quits before things get any worse. Zara didn't say anything. He was right. The mission had gone tits up very quickly, and they had already lost half the team. We're not too far from the fence. We can head back and report the situation and let them decide the next move. But first, we should return to the crash site and see if we can find a trail to follow. It's a better plan than any, Zara said. The pair walked through the wasteland, retracing their steps to the truck. The rain had washed away their footprints, but thankfully Zara was good with directions and had no problem leading the way. They proceeded in silence. Then, out of the blue, she blurted, "It's my fault." Theo stared sympathetically at her. She was essentially their tour guide, and it was her responsibility to navigate the unfamiliar terrain. But how could she have seen the earthquake coming? Before he could say something, she stopped and pointed. There! Theo looked, and indeed, there was the collapsed building. And next to it was the truck half submerged in the earth itself. He started forward, but she put out her hand and stopped him. Don't. She pointed to the cracks in the earth. The ground is very unstable. Your weight might be enough to send everything crumbling into that crevice. He followed her gaze and found the crevice. It seemed to go on forever. We have to do something, he said. Maybe not. Her finger moved, and he followed to find a pair of heavy-soled footprints leading away from the scene. Looks like they made it out and went that way. At least, one of them did. Let's go find out. We should hurry, too. The sooner we find them, the sooner we can head back. They followed the footprints, but Zara stopped to stare almost sadly at the truck before they went. Theo could not help but notice how different Zara seemed. From what he had read of her, she was supposed to be this brave adventurer, but the woman walking beside him was visibly rattled. Retirement must have done a number on her. Still, she was the only member of the group he had admired before he even met. Her resume made him feel less significant to the team. Then again, even without the comparison, he didn't feel any better. He wasn't a good person. It was almost as if Zara was on the same wavelength of self-pity. This is because of me, she muttered. It's my fault. Don't say that, Theo said. You couldn't have known. The earthquake came straight out of nowhere. Besides, you weren't even driving. The look on her face was that of guilt. Theo knew it all too well. He saw it in the mirror very often. The day he had received the news of his admission into the space program should have been the happiest day of his life. He was to be a part of the future of space travel after all. And perhaps, if he had waited to get home, or at least pulled over to the side of the road before he opened the email, it would have been. All it took was a few seconds of distraction, and an unfortunately placed bend in the road for him to lose control of the vehicle, and end the life of the young man who had been out jogging. Fearing that his crime would cause him to lose everything and probably end up in jail, he hastily fled the scene and never looked back. The boy had turned up on the news by evening, but no evidence of the driver or the car ever came up. Chapter 3. The footsteps became more and more visible the more they followed. Clearly, the person had gotten caught in the storm like them and had to stomp through the muddy ground in search of shelter. A small house was where the trail led them to. Spurred on, they hurried into the building, and there they found a figure in a matching hazmat suit sitting on the floor with their head in their hands. The figure looked up as they entered and jumped to their feet. They recognized her immediately.
Maya!
They chorused. Their excitement quickly turned to horror when they found that behind the suit's helmet, there was bloodstain on one side of her head.
Oh God, are you all right?
Theo said.
Fine. I'm fine, she said. I bumped my head after the collapse. It's just a concussion, but I can't dress the wound. Luckily, the bleeding stopped a while ago.
Theo looked around.
Where's Ryan? He's fine. We got separated and he went on ahead to the nuclear station.
What? Zara blinked. But that's not...
Yeah.
Maya went on.
Now that you two are here, we can keep going.
All right then, Theo said.
What?
Zara repeated. Both of them stared at her.
What's wrong?
Theo asked.
What's wrong?
She repeated.
What do you mean? What happened to the plan? We were supposed to head back to the base.
Yes, but that was before we found the others. We found Maya, Zara corrected.
And Ryan is waiting for us,
Maya said.
He's probably already at the nuclear station right now.
They stared at Zara expectantly, until at last, she sighed resignedly. All right then, let's go. Zara let them go on ahead as she struggled with reality. She was willing to bet her life that there was no one waiting for them at the station, but she could not say it. How could she tell them that she knew for a fact that Ryan had never left the truck? And why was Maya so sure he was waiting for her? Suppressing the wave of nausea rising in her stomach, she checked that the oxygen tank was secured to her suit, and then she went after them. Several years ago, the nuclear station in RA-215 had suffered a meltdown, and the resulting explosion had destroyed the city, killing everyone within. It was for this very reason that the trio came to a stunned halt in front of the nuclear station, which was very much intact. It had clearly suffered some kind of explosion because a portion of the building had been blown off, but it was too complete to be the epicenter of a nuclear explosion.
What the hell is going on?
Zara said. She looked around, but the others were just as confused.
This is impossible,
Theo stated.
This building should be nothing but dust.
Come on, Maya said. Ryan is waiting. Without waiting for them, she jogged on ahead, leaving them to follow. As she walked down the labyrinth of hallways, Zara's mind cast back to the military base just before she left. While the others had been led to the car, General Grant had pulled her aside. "Miss Maeve, if I could have a word," he had said. "I assumed you were out of those." "Funny," he had said with a straight face. "Mrs. Maeve, I am aware of your particular set of skills, and this is why I am entrusting the main mission to you. Hidden somewhere in all the ruins is the power core. You are to find it and bring it back at any cost." He had held up his tablet and showed her a picture of the core. It was a small blue rock held in a transparent canister. "I thought everything was destroyed in the explosion." He had chuckled there. "The core is pretty tough. Not even a nuke could destroy it." "How do I find it?" she had said. "Attached to your suit, and your suit alone, is a tracker attuned to the specific energy signature of the core." He nodded to the gauntlet on her arm. All the suits had it. It showed their oxygen levels and indicated if there was a breach. It also measured their temperatures and vitals. As she held it up, he tapped on a button in the corner and a radar popped up. "What made you so sure I'd accept? I intend to make it worth your while. You wouldn't pass up an opportunity to secure your daughter's future." She had scowled at him, but he rolled his eyes. "Do not misunderstand me. I'm a parent too, Mrs. Maeve. Now, do you understand your mission? Find your little shiny rock and bring it back." "Got it." Zara tapped on the gauntlet, and as she expected, she found the glowing blue icon. It was very close. She would need to find the right time to sneak away and search. They caught up with Maya inside when she finally stopped. They had reached some sort of control room with screens everywhere. Zara went to one of the screens and set her gun aside as she inspected the machines. Everything was intact. "Where's Ryan?" Theo asked. "He's got to be around here somewhere," Maya said offhandedly. Saying no more, she wandered past Zara and disappeared from the room. Theo started after her but stopped when he realized Zara was not following. "You coming?" he said. I mean, we're already here," she said. "I'm sure Maya can do the rest." Theo raised a brow and Zara sighed. "We have a mission here, remember? This building should not be standing, and yet it is. Finding out why takes priority. If this much survived, we should try and find external hard drives and such. They should be useful to tell us what the hell happened here." Theo nodded. "You're right. We have limited time, so we should split up. You're more likely to know what to look for, so why don't you check for the drives and I'll see what I can find at the source of the explosion." "Sounds like a plan." Halfway through turning away, he paused, his eyes fixed on the console beside Zara. "Wait, where's your gun?" Chapter 4.
Looking for something?
An unhinged chuckle followed the sentence as they turned to see Maya enter the room, the assault rifle snug in her arms. She aimed the gun in their direction. "Maya, put that down. You could seriously hurt someone," Zara said.
Oh, that's the intention, Zara.
Maya said.
To hurt you. Like you hurt Ryan.
Zara's eyes went wide. "What the hell are you talking about?" Theo said. "Where's Ryan?"
Ryan's not here.
The sadness in her voice was clear. "What do you mean he's not here? You said he was here."
I lied,
she said in a sing-song voice.
but she already knew that. Didn't you, Zara?
"What? What are you talking about?" Zara said.
I know what you did, Zara.
She leaned in and squinted dramatically.
I know.
Zara's brows furrowed. How could she know? She wasn't there. The only people who knew what had happened in the truck were her and Ryan. And as she had just stated, Ryan was in truth dead. And it was by her doing. "Maya, you sound crazy right now," Theo said. "Put the gun down and let us talk."
I'm crazy?
Maya snapped. Up until now, she had been approaching and now stood with her gun aimed directly at Zara, ignoring Theo entirely.
The echoes told me,
Maya said.
the mirror echoes. They told me everything. How you smashed his head into the steering wheel until he was barely conscious. And then you took his oxygen and left him to die.
"Zara wouldn't do that," Theo said. "Why would she take his oxygen? We each had one tank. That's absurd."
Enough talking. I've already given her more time than Ryan had.
She readied to fire, but Theo, who was now in her blind side, stepped in, swinging a keyboard. He clocked her right in the head with enough force to break the device. As she stumbled, he followed her, reaching out to grab the gun.
Let go, Theo! I have no business with you!
Maya snapped. "I won't let you kill her!" "Theo, stop!" Zara yelled, but her voice was lost among the commotion. They wrestled for the gun, moving around the room. With a cry of fury, she pushed him to the wall. Then, the gun went off. Everyone in the room had wide eyes in anticipation and dread. A few seconds passed, and then Maya sank to her knees. "Maya!" Theo lowered her to the ground and backed away, enough to see the bright red patch of blood on her chest. There was no saving her. "Maya, no!"
I rigged the plant to detonate,
Maya said.
For real this time. It's what they want. For us.
Her body went slack with her eyes still open. The life left her. Theo rose to his feet, eyes wide in realization of what he had just done. "Zara, we have to leave. We have to leave now!" Just then, a flash of black zipped past Zara's sight and disappeared into another room. Zara had no idea why, but suddenly she felt a strange urge to follow. And so, she did. "Zara!" Theo yelled. "This place will blow!" She came into another room, and there she found a platform. It was like a pillar, except there was a gap in the middle, and in that gap, there was a floating blue crystal, the very same one the general had asked her to retrieve. Without thinking, she went up and grabbed it. There was an electrical hum as her hand made contact. She pulled it, but an invisible force pulled back, and the crystal flew out of her hand and returned to its place. Something caught her eyes. Ahead of the platform, there was something quite inexplicable. It was like a pulsating tear in reality itself. As she watched, it widened, and looked through, she saw, just barely, what looked like a desert land. This was some kind of portal. The more she looked, the clearer it became. There was a girl dressed in a spacesuit walking towards the portal. In front of the portal, on her end, there was a broken pillar that looked strikingly similar to the one that stood before Zara. A flicker in the corner of Zara's eye caught her attention. She turned and found the mirror echo in the corner of the room. As she drew close to it, it stayed in place. She reached out to touch it, but her hands went right through. The mirror echo floated towards her and hovered, staring at her. Without warning, its shadowy body flared up and covered Zara until she could see nothing but blackness. Before she could even think to panic, it was over, and the world returned to normal. And somehow, in that split second, she understood perfectly. She understood everything. This breach, she said. It's been here all these years, hasn't it? It's what destroyed the city, and it's been feeding off of the radiation in this building ever since. You came through it. And now, they want to create a nuclear explosion to get enough power to fully open the portal and invade Earth. The mirror echo did not make a sound, but Zara knew in her heart she was right. You're not like the others. Why are you helping me? What are you? It tilted its head, studying her. And then, in an almost human voice, it spoke. Mesa, Zara repeated. I'm Zara. Theo ran into the room, his expression frantic. Zara, I don't know what you think you're doing, but we have to Holy shit! What is that? This is a mirror echo. One of the good ones, it would seem. Zara turned to face him. There's something you should know, Theo. Maya was right. What? No, you wouldn't. Why would you do such a thing? During the crash, my oxygen tank got damaged. I was left with a decision. It was either I took Ryan's and left him for dead, or I would die. I chose me. Theo clenched his jaw hard and shut his eyes. We can talk about this outside this blasted city. Right now, we need to move. Double time. How much time do we have? Enough time to make it back to the base if we leave right now. I cannot leave. If the nuclear explosion goes off, it'll feed the portal and bring more of these things into our world. I have to destroy the portal, and I have to displace the crystal to do it. Then take it already and let's go! The crystal cannot be entirely removed. There's a force that pulls it back into place. All I can do is hold it out of place. And I have to do that for as long as is necessary. And how long is necessary? There was really no duration. Zara knew. In the same way she knew everything else about the situation. That the only way to close the breach was to remove the crystals on both sides of the portal. Otherwise, she would merely run out of strength and let go. Their only chance of succeeding here rested in the mysterious girl on the other side, somehow knowing what to do. But Zara did not tell him that. It doesn't matter. If I succeed, I will destabilize the breach and it will collapse on itself. You know what will happen to me when that happens. Theo's eyes widened. No, she nodded grimly. I have to think about more than just myself, Zara said. I have to think about my daughter and the rest of the world, really. Just go. She grabbed hold of the crystal again, and even though it crackled and sputtered, sending tingles up her arm. She refused to let go. Planting her leg firmly against the platform for leverage, and with all the strength she could muster, she pulled at the crystal. The same force as before tried to return the crystal to its original position, but this time she was ready for it and redoubled her effort even as the humming grew more erratic. In the distance, a wailing sound, just like the mirror echo had made earlier, except it was louder and more cacophonous. The mirror echo named Mesa let out a screeching wail in response, facing the doorway. "The others are coming," Zara said. "Leave, Theo. They're here to stop me. They can't physically harm you, but they mess with your mind. They bring up your guilt, and they make you see things." "Zara." There was an explosion of rushing wind as hundreds of echoes burst into the room, flying around like an army of ghouls. Theo ducked for cover, but they were not interested in him. "Just go already!" Zara snapped. The urgency in her voice, as well as the looming danger, propelled Theo to the door, but he stopped long enough to give her a final look before disappearing. She hoped he would make it out in time. The building around her shook violently. The walls cracked and chunks of the roof fell all around her. The wailing of the mirror echoes grew more and more discordant, and as she looked up, she saw them attempting to swarm her. But somehow, Mesa kept them away. Unfortunately, Mesa was one, and they were many. Zara watched in horror as the mirror echo was ripped to shreds before dissipating into nothing. There was no time to grieve, as they quickly turned their focus to her. The next moment, she was overwhelmed with a whirlpool of mirror echoes. They could not touch her, but they flew right through her, and as they did, she felt a chill race through her. Memories of her most painful regrets flooded her mind, blinding her with guilt. All the time she spent away from her daughter, missing her childhood because she could not stop chasing leads. Just when she thought she might give up, Zara opened her eyes, and there, on the other side, the girl in the spacesuit had mirrored her action and was pulling with all her might. The breach began to shudder like an angry beast, and bolts of lightning streaked out from the crystal, disintegrating every mirror echo it touched. And then it began to suck in everything around. Tables and chairs went flying. Chunks of the walls were ripped out. Even the mirror echoes were not spared. As it swallowed the room, the breach began to shrink, but its pull only increased. Soon, Zara was lifted off her feet, but she managed to keep hold of the crystal. Pain flared in her arms like never before, but her resolve was great. If she was sucked in, she would take the crystal with her. Her hazmat suit torn away from her body. Her cheeks rippled as the skin of her face stretched agonizingly. She could only feel her muscles tearing and her bones threatening to dislocate. But under the pain, she felt a resolute calm. The last thing she saw before she closed her eyes a final time was a blinding flash of white, and then the portal imploded. Hey sci-fi horror fans, it's Gina. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Thank you to all our official channel members. Your support means a lot to us. Craving another scary story? Click that video on your screen. Until next time, everyone. And remember, stay cosmic.